Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS Report. I'm your host, Brock Seguin. There we go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Wednesday, March 2nd edition. The Lucky Took's back. It wasn't a great night last night. All in all, it was pretty solid, but we're going to keep this Took rolling for a little bit, see if we can make some money. How about those Jets last night? Oh, my God, didn't see that one coming. I mean, to a certain extent, you could see it coming just because it is the Montreal Canadiens after all. They played great under Martin St. Louis, but they're still not a very good hockey club. So, I mean, yeah, I didn't see it coming to the extent that it did. Winnipeg 2 was still very high on our list last night. So, I had a little bit of Winnipeg 2, probably not enough, but they went obviously just completely insane. The Jets wish we would have had a little bit more of them yesterday, but I know I personally had a little bit, so they kind of saved the night. There was some other spots that we did well on as well. Goaltending was kind of a mystery last night. Koskinen, I had a little bit of Koskinen. But yeah, all in all, Monday was better. Tuesday was okay. Looking for a good Wednesday here, 4-game slate. It doesn't start till 7:30 p.m. Eastern either, so it's a little bit extra time to build some lineups after today's live show. Exciting addition to Daily Faceoff today. We got this new little trade deadline header, which is exciting. We're a couple weeks away from the deadline there, so we're going to have tons of great coverage leading up to and obviously on the trade deadline, so looking forward to that. But let's get into tonight's 4-game NHL slate. We've got the Toronto Maple Leafs hosting the Buffalo Sabres. Peter Mrazek goes for the Maple Leafs against Craig Anderson for the Buffalo Sabres. The New York Rangers most likely going to turn to Igor Shesterkin, but we probably won't find that out until warmups. Ville Husso expected to get the nod for the St. Louis Blues. He was first off the ice at the morning skate. Jake Ottinger gets the nod for the Dallas Stars. Most likely going to be Cal Peterson for the Kings. We just saw Jonathan Quick get yanked the other night, so should be Peterson. He took the morning off. Signs are pointing towards Peterson being between the pipes tonight for the Kings. Chris Driedger gets the nod for the Seattle Kraken, who some believe had a potential COVID scare this morning. Turns out no, they canceled the morning skate, but it was not due to any of the players. So they're fine. They're good to go. But Driedger gets the nod for the Kraken. The Nashville Predators most likely going to turn to UC Staros. That game does not get underway until 10 p.m. Eastern, so we won't have confirmation on Staros until about 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So, Graham, any tournament tonight? I forgot to create a tournament, did I? Okay. I will. I'll create one as soon as the show's over. You guys will have about an hour-ish to 2 hours to fill it up. So, let's roll through tonight. Implied totals. It's kind of a weird slate, to be completely honest with you. The Maple Leafs are just absolutely massive favorites. The rest of the games all look actually pretty low scoring. They also look a little bit closer. The Predators are pretty big favorites in Seattle. But other than that, it looks like potentially 3 low scoring games. And then the Maple Leafs is massive favorites. So the Leafs are obviously going to be tremendously chalky this evening. When targeting them, you're going to have to find ways to get a little bit different because, they're just by so far and away the best target tonight that they're going to be super chalky. But the Predators look pretty good at 3.2 in Seattle. Dallas hosting the Kings at 3.1. And then you've got the Blues and the Rangers both there in the middle of the pack. Crazy Habs Jets game. A team lost. Loses 4 goals. Yeah, it was crazy. 4 unanswered, then 4 unanswered, then 4 unanswered. It was an absolute shit show. I had a little bit of Josh Anderson last night too. A little bit of Montreal 1. Anderson's hat trick obviously helped those lines cash. So a little bit of Detroit 1 as well. They, Larkin has just been unbelievable. Raymond with the game winner was nice. But let's focus on tonight's slate here for games. in terms of the big board, usual candidates at the top. You got Toronto 1, LA 2, grading out really well. Talk about LA 2 a lot, about how they're more of a matchup play than some of these other really good lines. We'll get into their matchup in a little bit. Dallas 1 looks good. Toronto 2, Nashville 1, LA 1, Rangers 1. Then the Blues second and third lines, kind of rounding out our top 10 there. Start the first game, though. You get the Leafs and the Sabres. So as I mentioned, it's massive favorites. Are going to be tremendously chalky tonight. You've got Toronto 1 playing literally the best, hockey in the NHL right now. 22,000 to full stack them. Michael Bunting's still very affordable at 5,100. But the other two, you got Matthews at 9,000, Marner at 7,900. Very, very expensive. But, as the biggest favorites on the slate, it's pretty easy to want to still target and full line stack this line. The second line continues to get chances, just cannot break through. Tonight, obviously, a pretty good matchup, a chance for them to break through. I saw on Twitter right before I came live, Sheldon Keefe said that John Tavares looks like a player that's about to break out. And honestly, like all of his expected goals, all the expected goals models really expect big things from him here in like the second, third, or final third of the season. So Tavares at 5,900 and Nylander very affordable. They should carry much lower ownership than Toronto 1, so they are a nice pivot spot. If you want to go with an onslaught stack tonight, I know I have in a few spots. They're just way bigger favorites than anybody on the slate, and all the other three games have the look of games that could be potentially low scoring. I mean, you got a goaltending duel between Shesterkin and Husso, two of the best goalies in the NHL so far this season. The Stars on home ice against the Kings. That game could kind of go either way. But I wouldn't be shocked if it's, a little bit on the lower scoring side. And then you've got the Predators who don't score a ton of goals against Seattle, who play a pretty good defensive game, but overall they don't score a lot of goals either. So, you're looking at three pretty low scoring games, and then Toronto, a team that could, easily score 5 or 6 tonight. So they could get production from both the top line and the second line, potentially even the bottom 6. So an onslaught stack is certainly one of my favorite ways to attack this slate. And I think it'll probably even that will still be pretty popular, but there is ways to get different, right? There's only so many, half decent players that you can fit in your lineup with them. So you just got to kind of tinker and do some funky things with an onslaught stack, but I think it's certainly a viable play tonight when you look at the implied totals. Buffalo 1, still Skinner, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, Cousins, Middlestat, Okposo on that second line. Okposo, 2,900. Been shooting the puck a ton. He's absolutely on fire right now, which is just crazy to even say in 2022. But in terms of the matchups for this game, looks like it's the highest event game on the slate, which also bodes well. Matchups across the board for Toronto are just spectacular. As for the Sabres, pretty brutal across the board. If you're really interested in targeting the Sabres tonight, the top line is obviously the one that's, very, very good, and the one that's really the one that could probably, have a lot of success on any given slate. But tonight they're going to be going up head-to-head with that Matthews line most of the night. That Matthews line is just terrific defensively. So I really have no interest in Buffalo 1 tonight at all. It's a horrendous matchup for them. Matchup-wise, Buffalo 2 looks like the slightly better option as they go head-to-head with that John Tavares line. That Tavares line is much worse defensively than the second, or the Matthews and Kampf line. And then, honestly, the offensive numbers from Buffalo 2 are pretty similar to Buffalo 1. So they look like an interesting kind of really, really cheap, low-owned pivot spot. You got Cousins, Middlestat, and Okposo. Again, I said Okposo's hot. Middlestat's played okay. Cousins has been pretty disappointing. But 8,600, they're dirt cheap, almost minimum price to full stack them. And they're going to see next to no ownership. So I don't really have a whole lot of interest in the Sabres at all tonight, but Buffalo 2 is kind of an interesting, like super contrarian option. On a 4-game slate, it's kind of hard to find those super contrarian options. Again, back to the matchups. It's going to be a lot of just top 6 against top 6 for the most part, both really good matchups for the top 6 for the Maple Leafs. Obviously, the top line's been outstanding all season long. 41 scoring chances for, 16 high danger, almost outstanding. Going up against this top line for the Sabres, which has been pretty, basically, they're just below average defensively for this slate. Then you've got Toronto 2, very, very good still. Not quite as good as Toronto 1, but obviously that shows up in the pricing as well. So 32 scoring chances for, 13 high danger is good enough. Going up against, again, basically top 6 against top 6. But yeah, looks pretty good. Again, if you want to target the Leafs, if you want to target whether it's top line, whether it's a second line, and you want to still incorporate some value, but also play some half decent other stacks in there as well. Rasmus Sandin is expected to move up to the top pairing tonight and play with Morgan Rielly. So he should pair well with either the Leafs top line or Leafs second line. Should play well over 20 minutes at minimum price. We'll also see that second power play unit usage as well. So Sandin's a nice alternative if you can't fit Morgan Rielly to these Leaf stacks tonight as well. As for the power play report, number one power play advantage on the slate also goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their power play is very, very good. It's the number two power play unit overall on tonight's slate, but going up against the worst penalty kill on the slate. So by a very, very wide margin, the Toronto Maple Leafs have the number one power play advantage overall. Looks prime game stacking this Buff and Toronto game. Yeah, yes and no. The Sabres their offense has really cooled off over the last couple of weeks. And then you take a look at how they have the worst power play advantage on the slate as well. I actually like Peter Mrazek a decent amount tonight. So I don't know so much if I'm going to game stack this one a ton. I think that Buffalo 1's really the only super viable option, and it's a brutal matchup for them. So I don't know if I love game stacking this one. If there was a game that I was going to game stack, it would most likely be this one. Chris B, yeah, I prefer to avoid the Rangers game. Yeah, to be honest with you, that one, we'll get to it here in a second. But that one's pretty interesting, especially with both teams having, you got the second and third best power play advantages as we see here. The Rangers are the best power play overall on tonight's slate. The Blues have a pretty good kill, but still number two power play advantage for the Rangers. A lot of that kind of has to do with the fact that the rest of the power plays or penalty kills on the slate kind of saw each other off, right? I mean, like the Kings very good on the power play, but the Stars very good on the kill. So, kind of by default, you've got the Rangers and Blues there, but the Blues not very good on the power play, but the Rangers terrible on the kill. So second and third overall power play advantages there. In terms of the 5v5 score, New York 1 grades out the best, still not that great, but just slightly ahead of St. Louis 2. St. Louis 2 has kind of been all or nothing, right? I mean, I feel like they've had just massive games for us this season, or they do nothing. But tonight is a pretty interesting spot here for them. The main concern obviously being Igor Shesterkin, but you've got kind of the Pavel Buchnevich revenge game narrative returning to New York. So I think that he's probably looking to have a pretty big game. He's had an outstanding season. He's kind of a player that I always liked when he was in New York. He just never got the deployment to really break out. He has had no shortage of playing time in St. Louis, being in the top six almost exclusively all season. Or 18,600 to full stack. Robert Thomas just under 5K. Tarasenko. They're very expensive, so I'm assuming that the fact that they are one, very expensive, and two, facing Igor Shesterkin should be enough to keep their ownership down to a pretty reasonable level, which makes them somewhat interesting to me. It is the second lowest event game on the slate. Matchup-wise, though, their matchup is much better than the Blues top line. Or actually, it's worse. Excuse me. The Blues second top line is going to see a little bit more of the fourth line of the Rangers. But overall, 41.9. Like I said, I don't really have a ton of interest in this game either. It's mostly top six against top six, bottom six against bottom six. No team's top six really in a great spot because both top sixes are pretty sound defensively, as you'll see here. The Zibanejad line has been, since moving Lafreniere up there, has been much, much better, especially defensively. 30 scoring chances for, 12 high danger. They've been really good defensively and offensively. So they'd obviously be pretty interesting if they weren't in such a tough matchup, because then you take a look at the Blues top six, very, very good defensively. So to me, as I mentioned, pretty low event game. It's two top sixes, like I said, going head to head. And they're both very, pretty solid offensively, but both very, very good defensively. The one line that struggles a little bit defensively is this Panarin line, but neither the Blues first or second line are really going to see a crazy difference there. You got the Blues second line about 50% of their ice time. So, they could struggle against the Zibanejad line. Things might open up a little bit more against the Panarin-Strome combination. So that's kind of why I like St. Louis 2 more. Just offensively, the numbers are significantly better. 35 scoring chances, 4/60 is really, really good. As I mentioned too, you got kind of the Pavel Buchnevich narrative, revenge narrative returning to New York. So overall, going up against Shesterkin is not usually something I suggest. The guy's literally got a 940 save percentage on the season. It's just unheard of good. So he's a freak of nature, should win the MVP in my books at this moment in time. But obviously he should be the favorite for the Vezina at the very least. And certainly scares me away a little bit. I don't love the Blues, but the second line is definitely the one that I would look to target. Probably the top line on the other side. Again, not a very good matchup going up against this top six that's very, very solid defensively. So I'm not huge on the Rangers either. And then, kind of as Chris B mentioned, it's largely a game that I would most likely be looking to avoid. The bottom sixes kind of have the better matchups. So maybe the Blues third line looks a little bit better, right? They play expect to see about 82% of their ice time against the Rangers bottom six. So their matchup's actually quite good. And it's a third line that plays a lot more than most third lines. It's a third line that's very, very talented as well. You've got Kyrou, you've got Braden Shen, you've got Barbashev. So they're actually a pretty interesting line. I would play them over St. Louis 1 as well. So I think St. Louis 3 is probably kind of, if you're just playing the matchup game, is the one to play in this game. Because even though New York 3 has a great matchup, they are not nearly as good without Alexis Lafreniere, so I'm going to completely avoid them. So St. Louis 2 or St. Louis 3 would really be the options here. Kyrou's obviously had an outstanding season. Braden Shen's been wildly productive when in the lineup as well. So, at a much cheaper price than the second line, you've got $18,600 for St. Louis 2 and $13,600. So $5,000 in savings to go down to St. Louis 3. Whether or not you leave Barbashev off or not is up to you. Kyrou and Braden Shen seem to form a pretty formidable secondary stack as a mini stack. So I'm totally going for the Buchnevich narrative. Yeah, like to me, I love St. Louis too, because I do feel like Buchnevich is going to have a massive game. In fact, I'm going to lock Buchnevich in as one of my hat trick picks right now, because I do kind of just feel like that narrative. He's like the type of player I think that's just going to go in and really like it already looks like the Rangers have just been destroyed on that trade, right? Like Rangers fans are already furious about that trade. So if he returns and just lights them up, I think it would be just that much more hilarious. So I'm going to lock him in as a hat trick pick right now. But St. Louis 3 as a secondary cheap mini stack with Kyrou and Shen looks really, really solid as well. So again, I said I'm not overly interested in that game and talked about it for 10 minutes, but St. Louis 3, St. Louis 2 piqued my interest to a certain degree. And then again, the Rangers power play is the best overall on the slate, so you always got to kind of look to that to be productive as well. Okay, third game of the night, you got the Kings and the Stars. So this one's pretty simple to break down from a matchup perspective. Again, second highest pace game on the slate. It's going to be a lot of the Rupe Hintz line going head-to-head with Anze Kopitar, and a lot of the Tyler Seguin line going head-to-head with the Phil Deneau line. So overall, that gives the Phil Deneau line by far the best matchup in this entire game. That Tyler Seguin line has struggled defensively pretty much all season long. They've only got a 48% Corsi for us. They're getting caved in. It is a very high event line, so that bodes well for this Arvidsson or this Arvidsson line, this Arvidsson to no more line, which we always talk about. 42 scoring chances for. They have a 61% expected goals for share going up against a Stars second line that's got a 47.4 expected goals for share. They get 31 scoring chances, 14 high danger. So a terrific matchup tonight for the Kings. We talk about how they're more of a matchup. You have to consider the matchups a little bit more for this line as opposed to some of the other ones. We avoided them the other night against the Bruins, worked perfectly. They got shut out. This is a matchup where I think you can fire them back up again tonight. Looks outstanding. So as long as, like I said, as long as this matchup holds true to form, as we expect St. Louis or Dallas 2 to see a lot of LA 2, they should be in for a good night. It's kind of the opposite for LA 1. They're going to see a lot of the Dallas top line, also a fair bit of the Dallas third line. Dallas top line, outstanding defensively. The third line is very good defensively as well. So I don't really like the Kopitar line all that much tonight. Then you factor in the fact that the Stars have the best penalty kill, second best penalty kill in the entire NHL, best on the slate. Doesn't look great for the Kings on the power play. So you're really just kind of looking to LA2 to have success at 5v5, and that's going to be really their only options tonight. Dallas 1, obviously, always one of the best lines. It has been one of the best lines in the NHL. They're very expensive at $20,400, so I think it's a decent spot to where you'll get them at a pretty reasonable ownership tonight, right? Because a lot of people are going to be spending the big bucks on Toronto's top six. So I don't think Dallas is gonna. I think Dallas will go pretty overlooked tonight. Obviously, when they're on home ice, they're much better than when they're on the road. The Kings did just give up 7 goals. Overall, I don't think it's a great matchup. But to me, I think whenever you can get this line at very minimal ownership on a 4-game slate, I think that you got to kind of at least consider them in your, if you're building a large amount of lineups. I think you're going to want to have a sprinkle of them, just because I do think you gain a certain amount of leverage. Maybe the Leafs, just for whatever reason, struggle a little bit. No one's going to have the money left over to spend on Dallas 1. So again, they're still going to see plenty of ownership because they're one of the best lines in hockey. But in comparison to Toronto's top line, it's probably half, maybe a third, right? Like I think you're going to see Toronto 1 at like 40% tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas 1's closer to like 15, which is pretty good on a 4-game slate for a team that's this that's a line that's this talented. And again, they're going up against the Kopitar line, which is not a great matchup, of course, but they're good enough to where they can hold their own in that spot. So the slightly discounted ownership that I imagine we'll see tonight makes them a pretty interesting option. Seattle and Nashville. Me personally, I don't think I've really played Seattle like once all season. This game as a whole looks pretty trash outside of Nashville 1. The one thing, though, that's just incredible is how affordable Nashville 1 is tonight. 14,500. I think you're going to see a lot of this Nashville 1 stacked with Toronto. It's going to be a wildly popular build because it should be. This is a line that is way, way too cheap. They've obviously cooled down to a certain degree, but they're still very good. Philip Forsberg, 6,100, Granlund, 3,500, which is an outrageous price for him. And then Duchesne under 5K. So matchup-wise, we've talked about it. The Kraken are pretty good defensively, but overall, the way the lineup's currently constructed, they look a little bit worse than normal. So the first and second line for the Predators both have pretty decent matchups tonight. But like I said, the Kraken, they're okay. The middle six is really struggling a little bit defensively, but overall, they just do nothing offensively, right? They're pretty boring to play against, but even though they don't give up seemingly a ton of chances, their goaltending's always been like under 900 save percentage this season. So they still give up plenty of goals. So it's hard to like really completely ignore how bad their goaltending has been. So in a matchup that's still positive for both the top six for the Predators, there is definitely reason to like them tonight. Specifically, that top line is just wildly underpriced, but you got to kind of remember that you're not the only one that's thinking, oh my God, Nashville 1 fits perfectly with Toronto tonight. Everyone's going to be thinking the same thing. There's the two highest implied totals on the slate as well. Like it's going to be super popular. So if you're going that route, leave money on the table, get different somewhere else, whether it's playing a really contrarian defenseman or whatever, right? So obviously it's a good stack, but just know that it's going to be super popular because it just makes too much sense. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm definitely going to have a little bit of it as well, but just know that you're going to have to try to get different a little bit in different ways. So the second line really doesn't do a whole lot for the Predators at 5v5. They have had a decent amount of production so far this season, including in games against the Seattle Kraken. So they're a nice contrarian or kind of like a pivot option off Nashville 1 because their ownership, again, should be like half, if not less. They're 8,200 to full stack. So you got Tomasino, Johansson, and Luke Kunin, basically all minimum price tonight. So like they're going to see very little ownership in comparison to Nashville 1. So maybe pairing them up with Toronto 1 is a way to get a little bit different and still get exposure to the Predators. Ceiling wise, this line has a pretty good ceiling, right? It's three very talented players. But floor wise, it's not very good, right? I mean, Johansson barely shoots. Kunin, he's been okay. Tomasino, he's put up many a bagel in the last month or so. So you just got to kind of know what you're getting into. But on a 4-game slate, if they have like 8% ownership, it's a good way to get different. So I'm definitely not in love with it. I'm not in love with their floor, but upside wise, I think it's okay. So Nashville 2 is decent. Again, Seattle, I don't normally play Seattle a whole lot. The second line grades out the best. Blackwell, Appleton, and Gord. It's actually a half decent line. Offensively, they haven't done a ton. But they've looked okay recently. Appleton and Colin Blackwell both have been shooting the puck a little bit. If you want to give them some shout, it's not quite Pavel Buchnevich, but it's a Colin Blackwell revenge game as well. So yeah, it's not a line that I'm certainly in love with tonight. Matchup wise, it's not great. I'm never going to tell you that I'm in love with Colin Blackwell, Yanni Gord, and Mason Appleton, but they look okay. Somebody's pointed out in the chat, but Yarncroc does look like a value option. If you want to go with this top line, they haven't really done a whole lot either. Matchup wise, they're not in a very good spot either. Like it's tough. It's a really tough game here for for the Kraken, but they're going to see next to no ownership. So the top two lines, I guess, if you're looking for just super contrarian plays, stacking them is something that's not going to be done very frequently tonight. Yarncroc at 3,200, definitely going to see a ton of ice time for somebody at 3,200. Eberle at 3,800, you know what you're getting out of Jordan Eberle. Morgan Geekie has played well when elevated up the lineup, but he hasn't done anything for like 3 months. So hot start to the season is really cool off. So again, I don't love the Kraken, right? Like I don't think anybody really does, but they're not going to see any ownership tonight. They have the second lowest implied total. So if you're just playing kind of the ownership game, looking for some contrarian options, Seattle is super cheap. They will you can fit them with Toronto very easily. So if you want to kind of go that route, more power to you. I don't love it, but the Predators certainly haven't been playing their best hockey as of late either. So not thrilled with Seattle. Yeah, I don't think anybody really is. I think this game has a 3-1 Nashville win written all over it. Probably 2 goals from Philip Forsberg and 1 goal from like Luke Cunnin or Roman Josi or something like that. I just wrote these completely like super specific guesses for each game. I don't think I've hit one of them this season, but I do have 3 hat-trick picks this year, so I must know something. Power play wise, not really good. Both teams' power plays suck. Both teams' penalty kills suck. So see what happens there, but really not a whole lot to write home about for either team. Defenseman, I kind of mentioned it already. Rasmus Sandin's one of my favorites tonight playing. He should play over 20 minutes. He's second power play usage. He's on the top pairing with Morgan Rielly minimum price. He's a great option. Outside of that, you got your regulars. Morgan Rielly 5,800 is actually a pretty nice price on him. Fox and Josi both going to be solid. I like Josi obviously a lot more. 7,200. He's going to be hard to fit in your lineups, whether you're playing Toronto, if you want to play Toronto. But he grades out obviously as the best defenseman on the slate. Favorite value defenseman on tonight's slate besides Rasmus Sandin's probably Esa Lindell. Outside of that, it's pretty slim pickings. I do like Dante Fabro. I have a little bit of a lean towards Ryan Lindgren because he plays like 20 minutes a night as well. The Stars are going to go with John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen on the top power play unit tonight. So Heiskanen at 4,400 is pretty interesting. Where's Klingberg even at? Is he even on here? Oh, there he is, 4,200. So they're both very reasonably priced, playing on the top power play units together. So they'll both correlate very well with Dallas 1 if you're going that route. Both pretty cheap as well. Alex Carrier is always kind of a decent value stack option as well. Blocks a ton of shots, but I prefer Dante Fabro in that spot. But yeah, Fabro, Sandin, Lindgren, Ryan Lindgren, Esa Lindell. Those are probably my favorite. Value plays tonight. Josi will have such high ownership. Yeah, no, I think it'll definitely be pretty high. Like in lines that don't feature the Maple Leafs, his ownership is going to be crazy. Obviously you can play them together. You just have to get different. But do I like Dallas 2 tonight? No, not really. They're going head to head with Philip Deneau's line, which Deneau's line gives up a decent amount, but I don't think that's really a very good matchup. I prefer Dallas 1 to beat Kopitar as opposed to Dallas 2. Dallas 2. It's a tough matchup. They are cheap though, so if you want to just for salary relief, if you want to kind of go that direction, they're not going to see very much ownership. Then yeah, I think they're certainly not like in my top 7 or 8 lines to target tonight, but it's a tough matchup. But price wise, they obviously have been playing better lately, and Jamie Benn 3,300, Tyler Seguin under 5K. It's tough to beat that pricing if they bring their A game, but been kind of few and far between in that spot this year. So not in love with it. Tough matchup. Goaltenders tonight. Okay, this is hilarious. I think it's the first time it's ever happened, but in terms of projection, it's actually rated exactly in terms of salary. So I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't really already know in terms of goaltenders tonight. I think Mrazek, I do like Mrazek a lot tonight. I think he's actually played pretty well for the Leafs. If he continues to play well, he's going to be their number 1 goalie moving forward. So I do like Mrazek tonight. It's a good spot. Matchup-wise, it's pretty solid. The Sabres have not been able to score lately. UC Saros as well. Obviously, you don't need me to talk into UC Saros. He's one of my favorite goalies in the world. Tremendous matchup for him. So I'm going to be playing them a lot. Jake Oettinger probably has the highest ceiling of the 3, though, seeing as he's going to see a ton of shot volume against the Kings tonight. So Oettinger's probably got a pretty good ceiling tonight as well if you're fading the Kings. Husso and Shesterkin, I guess it really depends who you think is going to win that game. I think that I trust Shesterkin a little bit more. He's also $200 cheaper, so I'll probably have quite a bit of Shesterkin. Whenever you can get the best goalie in the world at the current moment at 7,600, I think it's kind of difficult to go wrong there. So I like Shesterkin. It's not a great matchup, but at 7,600, he's so good, and he's capable of stealing games and stealing slates. Oettinger is going to get shelled. Yes. He's going to get fired. He's going to get a lot of pucks on net, but he's been playing outstanding. So it wouldn't surprise me if Jake Oettinger stops like 32 of 34 in a 3-2 win tonight. I wouldn't put it past him. He's been outstanding and should see plenty of shot volume tonight. But yeah, Shesterkin at 7,600, it's really difficult to go wrong there. not a huge fan of the bottom three there. Cal Peterson's obviously played pretty well. He's been winning games because the Kings are scoring, but he's still like around like a 900 save percentage over the last few months. So I'm not in love with it in a tough road game. I just can't with Chris Driedger. He's got like an under 890 save percentage since January. Craig Anderson against the Leafs is a hard no as well. So Mrazek, Saros, Ottinger, all look good. Shesterkin, if you need to save some money, obviously he's the best goalie in the world. So no reason to dislike him there. It's interesting though, because he's been like really cheap a couple times this year and he hasn't performed all that well. But I mean, this isn't a $6,900 Igor Shesterkin. 7,600 is a little bit more reasonable. Okay, so I already picked Pavel Buchnevich as my expensive hat trick. My cheap hat trick for this evening is going to be, I was going to go Ryan Johansson, but he doesn't shoot enough. I'm going to go Luke Cunnin. I don't know why. But Luke Cunnin as my cheap hattie. Pavel Buchnevich as my expensive hattie. Favorite stacks tonight. Like the Leafs, obviously. I think they're probably the top line and the second line are my two favorite stacks. It's impossible to ignore them on the slate. They stick out like a sore thumb when you take a look at the slate as a whole. So I love them. I think Dallas 1's interesting because, like I said, I think everyone's going to flock towards the Leafs. That I really don't think Dallas 1's going to see a ton of ownership. And I think that they can have a pretty big night tonight. So if you're building like 20 lineups or whatever it is, I think you need to have a decent amount of Dallas 1 because I think that you can get enough leverage with them. Outside of that, LA2, man, I think they're in a good spot. I know I talk about LA2 all the time, but favorite kind of like cheaper stack that's going to go overlooked, I think, is St. Louis 3. I like their matchup against this Rangers bottom 6. Kyrou and Shen at that price is really interesting to me. So I don't like, we all kind of want to stay away from that game, and the rest of the community is going to feel the same way. Especially when they look on Daily Faceoff and see that this is a third line, they're going to be like, well, I'm not playing them. But they play more than any third line probably in the NHL. Really, the top line, the second line, the third line, any one of them could be the minute leader that night. So kind of like lower, like under the radar stack to me tonight is Kyrou and Braden Shen. Do you ever build with two stud defensemen and take it from there? Not really. Like oftentimes, like I love when I get to play good defensemen with two cheap stacks. Like I think that's great. But I don't really prioritize defensemen. Personally, I kind of like to just build my stacks out and see how much salary I have left and kind of figure it out from there. I feel like I've got a pretty good track record of punting defensemen as well. So I don't really put a premium on them, but like if you stack like LA2 and Nashville 1 together tonight, you're going to have a ton of money left over and you can play like Roman Josi and somebody else pretty good. So Justin Hall fluked the last two games. I don't watch the Leafs, but 2,600, 5 points stands out. I mean, yeah, like he's not going to pick up an assist every single game, but I mean, whenever the Leafs are scoring 5 or 6 goals a night, like any of those defensemen are capable of picking up points, right? So, Hall plays enough minutes where he could just be on the ice for a goal and pick up an assist. It's not something that's going to be sustainable. I like Sandin a little bit more tonight. He's going to be playing with Riley and the big dogs more often and has a chance to a better chance of getting on the score sheet. So yeah, I think a lot of people will probably still flock to Hall just because of what they've seen. I don't think Sandin will see too high of ownership, but it's a little bit fluky. But like I said, when you're on a team that's scoring 6 goals, 10 goals a night, you're going to pick up assists every now and again. Kyrou Hattie, that's a good call. And hi, Yarmo. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's edition of the DFO DFS report. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Much larger slate tomorrow. Good luck to everybody tonight. Lafreniere sheet, maybe he'll have a good second half of the season. Hey, whenever he's playing in that top 6, he's in a good spot. I would like to see him be better, play well a little bit more consistently. But I saw a stat just recently that I think he leads the team in 5v5 scoring, like since January 1, or maybe for the season. I can't remember exactly what it said, but he's been productive. He's just inconsistent. But see you guys here on Thursday. Cheers.